Hi, y'all, and welcome to tonight's live stream. Michelle Troconis testified at trial. Now, those of you who have been watching the trial, the actual trial, will be saying to me, Lee, she didn't testify. You have that wrong. She never took the stand. What are you talking about? And you would be 100% right. She never actually took the stand at trial. And yet she did testify. She is accused of conspiring to murder her boyfriend's wife. And while she never actually got up on the stand during trial, she never actually raised her right hand and sat in front of the jury and answered questions. Her own words were a direct part of the trial because the state played 3 entire interrogation videos of Michelle Troconis. They did it by agreement. In other words, the defense agreed with the state that these could come in and that they could be played in their entirety to the jury. So while Michelle wasn't technically on the stand, she answered the very hardest questions law enforcement could think of, and we get to hear the answers. So what I've done is go through that third most important of all interrogation, and I have excerpts from that to show you tonight. How'd she do? As we go through, I'm going to ask you your opinion about what you think about what she said and how she came across. So happy Monday, everybody. We are moving into spring pretty quickly here. We've already got the daffodils coming up. I know that lots of you are still in the throes of heavy winter, so we're moving a little faster than that. And we have been covering for over a month now the case of Michelle Troconis, who is accused of conspiring to murder Jennifer Dulos. Jennifer disappeared in 2019. She was a mom of 5 and is presumed dead. Her estranged husband, Fotis Dulos, is the person that the state believes actually murdered Jennifer Dulos. Fotis is no longer around to face trial by his own hand, but his new girlfriend, Michelle Troconis, is around. For more than a month, we've been covering this trial, and it's all coming to a head. 4 years of investigation by the Connecticut State Police, a full trial, months of preparation, and tomorrow the lawyers will be giving their closing arguments. The lawyers and the judge met today for the charge conference, and tomorrow the jury will be charged. We're going to hear the closing arguments tomorrow, and then I'll report on those tomorrow night at 7. I'll go live and we'll talk about what happened during the day. So getting ready for that, for the ending of the case, we are going to watch excerpts from that third interrogation. Now, it took hours to play this at trial. I have chopped, pulled it down to some really critical excerpts so you can just get a flavor for what the arguments are. And I focused on what are the key arguments that the state is making, the key places where they believe they can prove Michelle Troconis was involved, that she conspired with Fotis Dulos to murder Jennifer. That's what I've been looking at. And so I cut it down. Like I say, it's not the whole thing. You can hear the whole thing. You can go back and replay the trial on Court TV, Law and Crime, other places as well. But this is just a short abbreviated part. It's also super hard to hear. So what I've done is I use AI to do a first cut to try to hear and understand it. A lot of times AI gets it really wrong. So I go back through and listen to it and then try to fix it up. I consider it to be a work in progress. So if you hear something, you think, I think it says something different, let me know because I like to get it right. Tonight, we are debuting a world premiere emoji for members of the channel, the Hi Y'all emoji. World premiere. It is exclusive to the Lawyer Lee channel, not available on any other channel, not in any other chat, and only for members. So making the chat more fun, making the comments more fun, thanks to our very own Marlon. So what is this membership? It's confusing, I know, so I'm just going to give you a little brief version. There are 3 ways you can help the channel. The first, you can hit the like button, totally free, and it helps this video, and I would really appreciate it. Number 2, and I'll pull that out so I can talk to you more directly, but number 2, you can subscribe to the channel. That also is a big help and totally free. Membership is a pay way to help the channel financially. every member gets to use the special emojis that Marlon prepared for us. So that's what it is. How do you do that? There should be, if you're on your computer or on an Android phone, you should have the word join inside a little oval, and you should be able to hit that and join. If you're on your iPhone, you may have that, or you may need to use the link that I put in the description to the video, either one of those. So, and a special shout out to the first 5 people in the chat tonight: Susan Moore, Skylar, Tree Hugger, Wild Irish Rose, and Teresa. Thanks all of you for showing up, and hi to you. So the reason that the third interrogation was by far the most important is that by that time, law enforcement had virtually all of the evidence that it ultimately got. So the questions were really pointed. They were informed. Law enforcement knew what the facts were, and they knew whether what Michelle was saying matched the evidence they had. They knew whether it matched what Michelle said the first 2 times she was interviewed. It's an extremely rare chance to hear what a murder conspiracy defendant thinks about all the evidence in the case, in her own words. Rarely do defendants take the stand at all, and even more rarely do they talk as openly as Michelle did about the case, the evidence, and the accusations. So we get to take a peek behind the curtain. You are going to hear from Michelle Troconis in her own words about the very most important points that the state is making. These are the arguments the state believes show that Michelle is guilty. And here's what she says about them. We're going to start with the script that was left out at the home where Michelle and Fotis lived. It was actually in a briefcase, and then another copy in the office. When law enforcement executed a search warrant of the home where Fotis and Michelle lived, they found handwritten timelines detailing what the 2 of them had done the day that Jennifer went missing and the day after. Now, law enforcement found 2 different versions. One that was more extensive than the other, had more handwriting on it. According to Michelle, the timeline was prepared at the request of Fotis's lawyer in order to make sure that they didn't forget the key points of the day. But Michelle's Friday timeline, which was the day Jennifer went missing, stopped just after 5 p.m., which means it left out the very most important piece of evidence that the state found, which was the fact that Fotis and Michelle drove 20 minutes away from their home into Hartford, Connecticut, and Fotis periodically stopped the pickup truck they were in and got out, went to the back of the pickup truck, grabbed a plastic bag from the bed of the truck, and threw it into a street trash can. Those trash bags contained DNA and blood from Jennifer Dulos. So why, the state wants to know, would Michelle leave off that one thing? Even if she didn't know what Fotis was doing, the drive into Hartford was still something she did that day. Supposedly, they were on their way to Starbucks. That was what she said Fotis wanted to do, and it was something that happened that day. So why not mention it? And here you will hear from her in her own words.
I have no idea what happened to Jennifer. I have no idea where Jennifer is, and that's 100%. I just know that I went as the stupid girlfriend to help him out because he told me, come and clean the house, and I did. Come, let's go to Starbucks. And I did, and in the way to Starbucks, we ended up, what? We ended up, he said, okay, let me throw the construction bags.
So why did you leave Hartford out of your script?
I didn't finish my first. If you see it, I have it until like 5:10. I received a call from Enterprise because I had to leave the car to the body shop, the Suburban that had crashed like 2 weeks ago, and I had a meeting already with Davidson, and Enterprise called me to say, because they had to give me a car, a rental car, the Yukon. So I said, guys, I have to leave. And before then, my sister also called. So I left. My what is it called? The timeline it wasn't even finished.
So it was incomplete?
It was incomplete.
You didn't ever.
So immediately what Michelle says is that the only reason she left Hartford off the timeline was because she just didn't get a chance to finish that she would have included it if she'd had more time, but she got called away to do other things. So the defense did introduce evidence that Michelle got a call about the rental car that afternoon, that she was preparing the timeline. And I assume that's to show that she might well have stopped writing in order to go get the rental car. That's what they'll say the evidence shows. But what about that slow cruise around Hartford, throwing out a shirt and a bra soaked in Jennifer Dulos's blood? Michelle said she thought Fotis was throwing out construction debris. He was in construction, and he had on other occasions thrown out construction debris, apparently to avoid the cost of disposing of it in dumpsters he rented for his work sites. At least that's my theory. Here in her own words is what Michelle said about that evidence.
And he's like, no, those were construction pads. When I say construction, what I've done in the past with him of cleaning the house is like tapes, a painting, a brush, a plastic, a piece of wood. I know, when I saw the pictures of the bags, when we didn't see anything with construction. Well, but I didn't know. And again, if you see the videos, because I saw the videos, and this is the garbage bin, the car was here and he was getting out and throwing it from there. So I wasn't even paying attention of what he was doing. Besides, I was in my phone, and you can verify that I was chatting with Nicole at one point, texting, and another time my dad called me.
Michelle, you have to get off the phone stuff, because the phone does not.
No.
Listen to me. This is going to be, if this goes to a jury, if you have to think about how the whole story is going to sound to 12 people sitting in the jury box. And whether you're on your phone or not, while he's driving you around Hartford, stopping in either 6 or 30 or some number in the middle, throwing out bags of garbage that end up being forensically linked back to Jennifer and to him, perhaps to you. I'm just telling you. How is that going to look? You can't, I'm on my phone, I don't know what he's doing.
No,
Is that going to sound?
He was going to throw construction pads. Like I've done.
This turned out it wasn't the case.
I know, but I didn't know that.
And why, as a construction guy working in the field of construction, would he be driving around Hartford in a creepy area of Hartford?
Exactly.
Driving around to multiple garbage receptacles, throwing out little bags. He has access to dumpsters, right?
Yes, but
Doesn't that sound strange to you?
No, because in the past, in an event.
Well, I gotta tell you, I consider myself a reasonable person, and that sounds strange to me.
Okay, can I tell you, when there was a Parade of Home show that A Mountain was part of it in October,
Yeah.
I did the same thing with Fotis. And that house was.
Was there body parts in those bags?
There what?
My point is, it does not sound reasonable.
Okay,
Okay.
It doesn't sound, but I've done it in the past, and I didn't find it. The only thing that I did find weird was the area.
Right,
And I did tell him, what are we doing here? And I saw the videos, and there's one when he parks that he opens the door 2 times. And I believe that's when I told him, what are we doing here?
So Michelle says she thought nothing of it when Fotis dumped the trash out, except for the sketchy neighborhood he had picked. She had no idea it was anything other than construction debris. But she says when she actually saw the photos of it afterwards, when law enforcement showed her the actual photos of what was in it, it didn't look like construction debris to her. She says while this was going on, while he was throwing this out, she was on the phone, talking, texting. And the detective told her, that sounds ridiculous. No jury is going to buy it. This is hugely important evidence. And I would like your opinion. If you're a member of the channel, you have special emojis. We talked about what those mean. And tell me if you have the special emojis, then give me either the police emoji or the Lady Con emoji to tell me who you think came out better on that. Do you think law enforcement is right? No one is going to buy that she was on the phone? Or do you think Michelle is right? people will say, yeah, very possibly she was on the phone. That's actually kind of reasonable. What do you think? And if you're not a member, put a 1 in if you think Michelle Troconis' argument was strong, and a 2 if you think it wasn't strong. So later that night, and I mean after the infamous Hartford trip, the police paid a visit to Fotis and Michelle's home as they began investigating the disappearance. If Fotis did not commit the murder, then he learned for the first time that evening that Jennifer had disappeared. So what did Michelle think when she heard that Jennifer was missing? You may be surprised to hear it, but she says she was scared. Here you go.
And I said, what? What do you mean that she disappeared? And he said, don't worry. She's done it in the past. She went to Aspen and she changed her name 20 years ago.
False.
She got upset with her parents. Okay. Then he started calling lawyers. And I was shocked. I was nervous. I thought in my head that she was gonna come at some point to the house. I was like, okay, I mean, what if she comes to this house? And I did tell him put alarms in the house, which I believe he did. The only thing he said, she's done that in the past. She disappeared, and she went to Aspen for 3-4 years. I don't know for how many years, and she changed her name.
What's interesting to me is that there is almost no way that Michelle's team could have gotten in the fact that Michelle was told that Jennifer had left before. That evidence would almost certainly have been ruled out. But the state and the defense got so many benefits from including this that they reached an agreement on that. So the question is, which one worked best, right? Which one is it going to help the most? And the next category I want to talk about, before I do that, actually, I have some thank yous to say. First of all, I really appreciate Robert Bates, very generous super sticker. Again, thank you. And Tom 23 Sacred Pond and Rexine Whirl, too. I appreciate all of you, and I will get the nets, too, on my next time around. So the next category, like I said, is hugely important. Did Michelle lie to law enforcement, and why? Was it for the purpose of misleading or hindering the prosecution? Was she just mistaken? Was she just confused? Here, we're going to listen to Michelle's explanation. This is probably what the state will talk about almost the most as far as pinning Michelle to the crime that they believe was committed against Jennifer Dulos. This is what we're going to hear a lot about, I think, during opening. And this is her answer to why she said things that were false and didn't mention some other things. One of the things she said that was false was in her first interview, she said Fotis was home that morning and the two of them showered together. She took that out later, said, I was wrong, he wasn't home, and we didn't shower together. They asked her, was that a lie? And she says, no, it wasn't. I wouldn't call it a lie. I was wrong. So we will now hear what she has to say about that.
Explain to me, why did you tell us things that you knew were false?
Okay, I was in shock. I was nervous. Fotis, when he told Pavel and I to write the timeline, you call it script.
Your timeline moves times and instance. His is a script of what he wanted. He had the reins. He wanted everyone to follow. He was driving the motor, you know what I mean?
Yes. He was like, yeah, he wrote it and he was telling what to say or what to write.
Why did you follow it himself?
I was nervous. At the beginning of the shower, I did thought, but then I said, no, I slept with Nicole. I didn't take a shower. And then I said, no, I didn't. So I said yes, and then I said no at the right after the second meeting.
Okay.
So, but I'm telling you, I mean, I've been going through it, writing over and over to try to remember every detail, and I've been getting more of a better sense of what I did also because I had the backup of part of my phone through chats that I can recover from my family and friends, and that's the only way I can match some things of that incident or that week.
Okay, and why didn't you tell us earlier about the key, about the car wash, about the coffee?
You guys didn't ask.
We asked you.
Just pausing it at 3:34:21. Detective Clabby just asked why the defendant did not tell you guys about the keys or the car wash, the coffee. And her response was, you guys didn't ask. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, in the June 6, 2019 interview, the defendant tearfully said to you that she would walk the world with you. Is that correct?
She did say that, yes.
But now she's indicating she didn't provide information because she wasn't asked.
That is correct, yes.
Michelle, in other words, is saying there was one thing she said that was incorrect at first. She doesn't want to call it a lie, and that was that Fotis was at home. She says she corrected that by her second interview, which was roughly a week later. They were just a few days apart. And she says, I corrected that. The other thing she says that you say I should have mentioned, you didn't ask about. If you had asked, I would have told you. I was willing to tell you anything. The state believes that the fact that she didn't mention it suggests something about what she wasn't including, that she wasn't truly being helpful as she was trying to project. So I want to say a thank you to Rhonda Jensen for the super sticker, and also a shout out to Mary from Chicago. I'm glad to have you as a new subscriber, and I appreciate the super chat.
I know, but you guys also have to understand that when I was arrested, they said you're gonna go to accessory, murder, I didn't even know those words, hindering, tampering, and 30 stops at night. I mean, you guys also exaggerate when I got the first.
Everybody makes mistakes.
So what we're getting into now is something that we know for sure that the defense is going to talk about. They mentioned it in the charge conference today. They mentioned it in an argument last week. They believe that it was not just Michelle who made mistakes. It was law enforcement too. There were numerous times they brought out during the trial when they said something to Michelle that proved to be wrong. And they say, well, look, ours was just a mistake. We didn't have the correct information. We weren't, or sometimes they said we were intentionally trying to see what she would say. We were trying to use that as a ruse to convince her to tell us things that we didn't yet know. And so that is the state's explanation for why it happened. But she says, look, I made mistakes. You made mistakes. What's the difference? We each made mistakes, and it doesn't mean that we're lying. So that's where they're going with this argument. We'll keep listening.
And I was in a prison, and I slept 2 nights in a prison. That each time, and when you guys sat down, that for instance, I said thunderstorm, you were the first one saying, I checked the forecast.
And I did, and it said it didn't happen, but now I understand that maybe it wasn't correct. Because guess what, when I'm wrong, I'm gonna admit that I was wrong.
But you didn't admit that moment. And you
I
made
didn't
me
know
cry.
like that. That's,
And you made me doubt what I'm saying, that day you guys attacked me, everything I
no,
was saying.
we provided information that we had at the time.
Okay.
We have a lot more information now.
But everything I said, you were questioning it, and I was doubting of myself.
Well, but that's just the process.
So this is another hugely important point. What is your opinion of Michelle's explanation? Was she lying, or did she just make mistakes? So if you're a member, then give me the cuff guy emoji if you think that she was lying. And if you think the argument makes sense, what she's saying here, which is she just made a mistake, give me the A+ perfect emoji. If you're not a member, 1 means you think Michelle was lying, and 2 means you think she just made a mistake. So now the next thing we want to talk about is the keys. A set of car keys, not even to Michelle's own car, became extremely important. And here's how. Before he died, Fotis Dulos was charged with murder. Law enforcement also named Fotis's employee, Pavel Gumieni, as having information, but he has been given immunity. He testified at Michelle Troconis' trial against her. He's not going to be charged. He's not going to be tried. Law enforcement believes Fotis borrowed Pavel Gumieni's truck, perhaps without any kind of express permission, and drove it to New Canaan, Connecticut, an hour and 20 minutes south of where Fotis lived, which is where Jennifer lived in New Canaan. He killed her in her own garage, shoved her body in the back of her own Chevy Suburban, and then did something nobody yet knows what with the body. It was the Friday of Memorial Day weekend. The next Wednesday, Fotis would take Pavel's truck, Pavel's red Toyota Tacoma, to get it detailed, the very one that law enforcement says they believe Fotis was driving and that he drove down to commit the murder. So we'll talk about that in just a minute. But the prosecution believes that Fotis and Michelle had a problem and that Pavel wanted to take his own truck home for the long weekend. And somehow Michelle managed to grab the keys to his truck, which was all a ploy, they think, to get Pavel to take one of the other company vehicles instead of his truck so that they could try to clean the truck up that weekend. So you can hear law enforcement explain what they thought might be happening, and then you can hear Michelle's response.
The reason that we're interested in the keys being in the lock, and then Michelle leaving, and then Fotis and Pavel realizing the keys have been taken by Michelle, is that the possibility is that Fotis wanted to keep that Tacoma longer so he could do a more thorough cleaning of it. And the fact that you remove the keys from the Tacoma door could be construed as you being part of the plan to keep the Tacoma longer. So do you understand that's why we're asking some of these questions?
But I didn't take it.
So did Fotis tell you to take the keys? Or did you just take them on your own?
No, what I remember is him calling me and saying, you took Pavel's keys,
Right.
and I said, did
But
I?
that's after you took the keys.
Yes.
My question is, why did you take the keys when you took them?
If I took it and I was the last one, probably because the door was open, I closed it and I took it. But my understanding is that they went back, they picked up the car, and Pavel took it with the motorcycle.
Okay, so
Answer.
did you take them just automatically without thinking?
Well,
Or did someone tell you to take them?
No one told me to take any keys.
Okay.
The car, with the door open, you close it, you take the keys, and then
But it's not your truck. Why would you
But
take
you
the
leave
keys?
a car open in the middle of nowhere in the house.
Not in the middle of nowhere, it's in a driveway to residence for those other people. You're not in the middle of nowhere. I mean, Pavel and Fotis are still there, and they're two people, and there are two other vehicles there, in addition to your vehicle, right?
Yes, all the cars were there.
So now I'm just trying to get through to you why we're so interested in why you
There's
took
no
those
why,
keys out.
but the keys, I have them, and I gave them, I'm pretty sure I gave them to Fotis when he arrived to the house.
My read of that is, frankly, I'm just confused. I'm still confused about whether there was any intent behind this, or even whether she really remembered taking the keys. She said she ended up with the keys, but it didn't really sound to me like she remembered why. So, members, you can either give me the confused emoji and join me in the confusion, or please, if any of you can help me understand which side does this help and how does it help? Because I'm really confused about where this came out. I still find this a little confusing. The most powerful surprise evidence during the trial was that there was a fire in the fireplace on May 24th, the day that Jennifer disappeared in the afternoon. There was back and forth movement that Michelle and Fotis did all afternoon, particularly Michelle, with 5 trips to one of the work sites for Fotis's company that was just 5 minutes away from their house. And the prosecution showed that twice during that day, they managed to get Ring camera footage from across the street, and they could show smoke coming out of the chimney at the house where Fotis and Michelle lived during periods of time. One of them was a period of time when only Michelle was at the house. At the other period of time, both Fotis and Michelle would have been there. But there was a problem with the way law enforcement asked about this during the interrogation. So let's listen to what was said, and then we'll talk about what that problem was.
Here's a question. Friday the 24th was a beautiful day. The weather was nice, do you remember? It was very nice.
Yes.
You and Fotis go to Hartford to throw out garbage and go to Starbucks. Why is there a fire in your chimney?
At what time there was a
When
fire?
you're in Hartford, not home. There's smoke billowing out of your chimney.
No, I don't think there was like smoke out of the chimney, but
Yeah,
I,
there was, I saw it.
Yeah, there's
There was.
video from your neighbor's house,
There
it
was
says
a
there's
fire.
tons of smoke billowing out. So when you guys are in Hartford, you have a nice fire burning with nobody home. And it's all recorded on video, so I do think, Michelle, that did happen, 'cause I'm not gonna just make stuff
no,
up.
I'm not saying that it didn't happen. I do turn the chimney a lot.
But do you go out for the day? Let's
It
do
wasn't night, it was the date.
Well,
it was day.
It was like, yeah,
Yes,
okay.
okay, yes.
So
But
nobody saw, what were you guys burning?
wood,
It was beautiful.
and I do wood. My mom came on Friday and I did wood.
People are outside in shorts and you're having a fire in the house?
I do fire every day, doesn't matter.
Every day.
Well, not
And
every
you
day.
leave it burning when you leave the house.
No, it wasn't burning when we leave the house. I don't think it was burning. It must have
Well, I think so, because we have video of you in the car in Hartford.
No, I was. I'm not saying that
And
it
at the same
wasn't.
time, we had video of your house having tons of smoke coming out of you. The house clearly didn't burn down, so there wasn't a fire, so.
No, but it wasn't.
So you guys had a fire that day?
Yes, I had a fire that day.
At what time?
When I came back, probably like around 5.
Around 5? But at 5 you were at 8 Mountain Road, because that's what Pavel already.
Well, 5:30. I
But
mean,
then you're going back and forth, so how was that at 5:30?
I was already at 5:30.
Just going to pause it at 3:51:59. The defendant indicated that she had a fire at approximately 5:30 p.m. on May 24th. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
During the course of the interview, did the defendant ever indicate to you whether or not she had set a fire at 2:56 p.m.?
No,
Did she ever indicate to you whether or not she had set a fire at 3:25 p.m.?
no.
I wasn't.
Got wood, started a
No,
fire,
what
got it
we
going.
have, what we have inside the house.
Is it a gas? I mean,
No, it's with real wood. We have a.
it takes a few minutes to start a fire and really get it going good.
No,
I mean,
you
your
buy.
chimney is
No.
blowing smoke, and you're
No,
going.
you grab the thing that you buy, that you peel the paper, you turn it on, and you put wood.
Duralock,
Yes,
that, they don't keep out a ton of smoke.
but not smoke. With the wood, with that thing with wood. That's what I'm saying.
Now, there's the chimney to your house, and it's crazy smoke coming out of it, and the Duralock,
Not
it's
with
not
the
crazy.
Duralock only, with wood. We had the wood. I have the wood inside the house.
and you left the house with the wood burning.
And that's not a problem. You put the fence, and it's not going to burn the house.
Okay. I can find you lies to say otherwise, but, so you did have a fire.
Yes, and I had a fire.
And you started that fire.
Yes, and I had a fire like 2 days after, and I had fire when my mom was there that she wanted to fire on that Friday. So, and even Pavel helped me carry logs that week.
That week or that day?
No, that week.
The evidence was bombshell. Why would Michelle have had a fire in the fireplace on May 24th? But she certainly did take it in stride. She didn't seem at all concerned about it in particular, except that she found it really hard to believe that she would have left the house with the fire on. And we did the timeline the other day on the channel here, and I think she was right. According to the time shown on the video from across the street, there was smoke from the fireplace in the afternoon, but Michelle was home. And then there was also smoke in the evening. And again, Michelle and Fotis were home that time. So now it becomes a question of just how much is the evidence worth? Is it that strange? Is it peculiar to have a fire on a decently warm May 24th in Connecticut? So what's your thought? Fireplace testimony okay for Michelle? Give it an A+ emoji. Not buying it, give me the loser emoji, or give me a 2 if you are buying Michelle's story and a 1 if you're not. So I also want to thank a couple of people. First of all, Cece and Sally, thank you very much for the super stickers. And also Janet. Janet makes the point that she doesn't think that Michelle is guilty, but that our guilty, hungry society will convict her. And I do want to say for a minute, it is generally a pretty safe bet to guess that a defendant is going to be convicted. I'll do one of these days, I'll pull out some of the stats so you can kind of think about it and mull it over. A Pew Research study suggested as few as 1% win on the federal side. I'm not sure that that particular study is actually representative across the board, but the bottom line is it is very much the case that defendants typically lose. Now, a prosecutor would say the reason for that is that we as prosecutors get to select our cases, and we only select the cases where we think the person's actually guilty. We don't do anything with the case if we don't believe the person is. A defendant would say this shows a bias in the society toward a guilty verdict, but certainly Janet is correct that the general statistics bear out exactly what she's saying. So the next area of testimony that was really important to the state was the phone call from the Greek friend Andreas Toutsardis. The prosecution believes Fotis intentionally left his phone at his house, at his home office that morning that Jennifer disappeared. He traveled to New Canaan to murder her, but he didn't want to be tracked, so he left his phone at home. They believe that the night before, he arranged for his best friend who lived in Greece to call him that morning while he was out and to give him an alibi. Fotis got 6 calls, I think may have been 5, that morning, and Michelle answered only one of them. She said that Fotis's lawyer, Kent Maywinnie, separate issue, but he's also charged as a conspirator, had dropped by the office to meet with Fotis. Fotis wasn't there, so that in and of itself was a little odd, but that Kent expected her to answer the phone. And so she did. She answered the phone. And here's her explanation for what this evidence
No, this is not true.
shows.
What's not true?
The shower together.
Right.
So did he tell you you took showers together, or did you tell him?
No, he said it.
So is that, Michelle, is that him telling you what to tell the police? Or is that him trying to help you remember what happened?
Well, obviously it was for me to say it, but
Okay.
he was trying to be more accurate, but with a
But it's
lie.
not being accurate.
With a lie.
Right.
With a lie, that's what I'm saying.
I mean, a lie's not accurate.
Like, I know, that's what I'm saying, like, he was trying to feel things that I said I don't remember, but with things that it wasn't true. That's not true, like, I didn't take a shower with him.
All right, so to recap, when you saw Kent in the office on
Got a little extra testimony in there, so now we're going to get to the part that I was talking about.
Friday the 24th, Fotis' phone was in the office, and the phone, you heard the phone ring, and Kent started moving towards you.
Like coming and saying, like, something with the call, like, grab the call, or
Okay.
is that a call, something with the call.
And you picked
And
up
I
the
picked
phone.
up the phone, I saw Andreas, but as I tell you, sometimes Fotis writes the name of women in man's name.
Did you suspect that that might be a call from a woman?
Yes.
Okay, but Ken pushed you, like he wanted you to, I'm not saying he encouraged you, he encouraged you
No, we
to
didn't
answer the
approach
phone?
each other. He
No,
was,
no, no, no.
he was far.
That's why he said, are you gonna get that or can you get
Yes,
that?
yes.
And he wanted you
Then
to
he
answer.
was like listening to me
Mhm.
with the phone, and there was like,
But did Ken wanted you to answer that phone?
it felt like yes, because he was like looking at me. Yeah, I was sure.
Okay. And did the phone ring again? That you know of? That
No,
you know?
because I left.
Did he say to you, are you gonna get it?
Yeah, he said something, are you gonna get the call, or is that the call? Like something with the call.
He said, is that the call?
No, are you gonna get the call, or is that a call? Like, I don't know exactly the words, but yes, he said.
So the prosecution believes Michelle answered this call, and only this one, because she was buying into helping with the planned alibi for Fotis. She was going to answer his phone at home, so it would look like he had stayed at home all morning, and that's why she initially said he was at home with her that morning. Now she says she just happened by the office. Kent Maywinnie kind of looked at her, and she thought, "Oh, I guess I should get that." And I do hope the prosecution has more evidence against Kent than just that he looked at someone and they thought they should answer the phone. Obviously, we've got questions about what exactly the evidence is against Kent Maywinnie. He's not yet on trial, so we have a ways to go before we get that. And I want to say thank you to Teresa, who made me laugh with her comment. If you can't convince them, confuse them. That's definitely something that does happen in law cases. And Sky Goddess, I appreciate very much your comment. Thank you. And I also want to say thank you to Beverly Lee as well. So I mentioned earlier that we would come back to the issue of the car wash. Law enforcement was deeply disappointed to find virtually no evidence inside that red Toyota Tacoma that had been driven down in New Canaan. That was Pavel Gumiani's truck. But that could well have been because Fotis took his employee's truck to get it detailed that next Wednesday following the day that Jennifer disappeared, following the Friday when she disappeared. So when Pavel, and this was when Pavel got back to work, he left his truck and then Fotis drove the truck over to get it detailed. And Michelle then went over, met him and drove him. They went to meet with the attorney and then they went back to pick up the vehicle. The prosecution believes this shows she was in on the whole plan to destroy evidence and to change the evidence within the Toyota Tacoma to hide Fotis's involvement. Now, she says all she did was drive her boyfriend to the car wash. So here are her own words for how she explains this.
But Pavel, the Toyota is Pavel's truck. Did Fotis ever washed it's one of his workers' trucks in the
I
back?
never saw washing that one, but yes, washing other cars from his years.
You didn't find it kind of strange that he wanted to wash it?
Because he told me at some point that Pavel wanted to sell it.
You don't believe that's a true story anymore told by Fotis?
No, because that's a lot of,
Why would Fotis be washing the Tacoma, do you think, if you have any idea?
obviously, all the evidence is because, and you showed me the picture of the blood in that door, it's because the body of Jennifer at some point was in there.
See, that's what's called reasonable. What we believe as well.
And I find it pretty damn sick.
I know,
That's sick.
I know.
That's utterly disgusting.
So I think part of the reason the defense got the experts that the defense did get is they wanted to convince a jury to disregard some of the statements like this from Michelle. It did seem that Michelle was very impressionable, that she tried very hard to accommodate what was being said to her and she was willing to change what she was saying. If they told her she was wrong, she tried to fix that. And that is exactly what one of the experts talked about, was the tendency of some people to do that. Now, my perception was that she did amend her answer when they told her she was wrong, that they had facts that showed she was wrong. And that's what the expert talked about. One of the things that we saw, and let me go ahead and mention Jennifer's comment. She says she believes potentially that Michelle would be found guilty on hindering the investigation, tampering with evidence, but not conspiracy to murder, that she saw that as something more as reasonable doubt. And that's an important thing to note, is that there's more than one charge against Michelle Troconis here. She is charged with conspiring to murder Jennifer Dulos, and that's the largest of all the charges against her. That's the one that could have the largest consequences. It's obviously the most serious, but there are other charges as well. So if all she did was lie to cover up things for Fotis and it met all of the elements of the charge, she could still be found guilty of hindering. She could still be found guilty of tampering if she was involved in knowingly washing that red Toyota Tacoma in order to prevent them from having any evidence that might commit Fotis. So those are still issues that will be considered. So we're getting in lots of, this is a surprise to me, I'll be honest. Kay Gal from Idaho is saying that she'll be shocked if the jury finds her guilty. Not the normal comment I get when we cover cases. So I am fascinated to hear this from you. Very, very interested to hear this. Thank you for everybody for talking about this. One of the things that the interview made really clear is that Michelle wanted to help the prosecution, that she wanted to do whatever she could to try to convince them that she was cooperative. She wanted very much not to be charged. She wanted to be somebody who could either strike a deal, maybe get immunity, something. Here's what she had to say on this
It's more
score.
deep than you still feel for this guy, or there's a connection, or you're trying to.
I don't.
There is detail. I mean, this is the last opportunity.
No, I know. He was cleaning the car.
You're not going to meet with us again.
I know, but he was cleaning the car.
So
The
there's,
inside where the seats were clean.
So
Inside.
I didn't see him inside, but
All right, so the door was open.
The door was open. He kind of walked. He asked for paper towel. So yes, he was.
And the truth is that she knows what the stakes are, and she
yeah,
knows.
there's,
That's what I can tell you.
we have what we have, and we see it from that. So we were actually very nice to you. I can understand it feels the way it feels.
So I may have cut a few words out of that. One of the things they said to her was, this is your last chance. There will be no more chance for you to come forward and talk to us. This is a third interview. We don't normally do third interviews. And she and her attorney are reiterating she's grateful for that. She wants to do anything she can to help. Now, there are two ways you could consider this. One way would be, despite the fact that she was warned, that she was told that this was her last chance, she still wouldn't tell the truth. She still wouldn't step forward and turn on Fotis. She was still trying to protect Fotis and herself. Another way you could look at it is, and it depends, which way you come down on this case is which way you come down on this issue is probably which way you break on the case. You could also hear this as, look, she wanted desperately to help. She knew, as the attorney says, what the stakes are, and she appreciated the chance, and she didn't have anything more to give. She gave everything she had. She had nothing left. She wasn't holding back on anything. She just didn't have what they really wanted. They wanted more than she could possibly give. Well, Robert Bates, thank you again for the super sticker. I really do appreciate it. Thank you very much. So you have now heard Michelle Troconis' own words. This case is nearly over. We are moving into closing arguments tomorrow. If you have questions, it's pretty late, but we have a few minutes for questions. So if you would put those inside, put those in the chat and with some question marks at the beginning. And I'm going to go through and answer some of those for about as much time as we have. And to sort of go through what are some of the issues that you are thinking about tomorrow. The jury will be charged. That's what the lawyers and the judge worked on today. The jury will get a physical copy. Each member will get a copy of what the jury charges are that they can take out with them. They're also going to have evidence back there in the room with them. And they will get to deliberate almost certainly tomorrow. The closing arguments are just an hour each. Do I think that's enough time? I don't, because I feel like the jury has to be somewhat confused because of the fact that there weren't opening arguments. And so I feel like they need more time. Obviously, they probably would have felt like that too. But the judge said this. He said he had been in broadcast news before law, and the newscasters, other than reports, really only spent about 8 minutes of the whole hour talking about anything that was considered substantive, and he figures an hour is plenty. So hopefully they'll be able to really hone in on what are the key facts and put it all together for the jury. Put together what was DNA evidence, what wasn't DNA evidence, what was blood, what wasn't blood. Where are the key facts that tie Michelle in? Where are the key facts that the defense believes didn't tie her in? So we are going to be hearing all of that tomorrow. It's really exciting, and I cannot wait to hear those closing arguments. The jury, I'm sure y'all asked me, let me flip over to the questions. Probably somebody will ask me, how long will the jury take? Which, of course, I cannot possibly answer, but it's certainly something everybody will be speculating over. I guarantee you the lawyers are sitting around talking about that now. How long do you think it will take? What will it mean if the jury comes back fast? What will it mean if the jury comes back slow? So Miles and Megan are asking me, what about Michelle Troconis carrying Fotis Dulos' phone from 6:40 a.m.? So the way I heard the testimony, and this could be wrong, I heard that she saw the phone in the office. There was confusing testimony at the first interview, granted. By the third interview, what I was hearing was that she saw the phone sitting there in the office and saw it ringing and picked up. That's what I think at least the final story is. That may have changed somewhat because in the first interview, I think it was a different story which is probably what you're talking about. Cognac wants to know, was Fotis ever interrogated like Michelle? And if so, was it ever shown? Oh, thank you, Cognac. Lights the explanation of legal issues. Thank you. So for what you're asking, I don't know the answer to that, other than I know for sure it wasn't ever shown. That part we know for a fact. It was not shown. But was there one? It wasn't played at trial. We haven't seen it. We do know that his attorney was heavily involved early on. And my guess is that he refused to answer questions, unlike Michelle. But we don't know a lot about what happened there. It's a good question. Deb asks, how much time would she get on the various charges? It's different amounts. And what we'll have to do is defer to a Connecticut lawyer on exactly what she could get for each of those different things. Some of them more, some of them less. Obviously, conspiracy to murder way higher than tampering. So Irish Twins wants to know, how important is the charging document? And are you surprised at the length of it? It's one of those things, Irish Twins mom, that is so boring to do as a lawyer. The charge conference is just not that exciting. It's statements of the law. How important is it? Super important for two reasons. It's the instruction manual for the jury, and it's what goes up on appeal. If any mistakes are made, then that's one of the grounds of the appeal, and the appellate court will have to decide, was this so big, so important that we're going to reverse the case over this? I once litigated in Missouri. At that time, they had what we called death penalty. That was just our term for it. Death penalty jury instructions. If anything was wrong on the jury instructions, it got reversed. That's very rare. It was unbelievably stressful. I got charged with doing the jury instructions for us. And it was so stressful because if you messed up, the whole case would be reversed. So you couldn't mess up on a single word. Every word had to be correct. Most of the time, it's a little less stressful than that. It's whether or not the appellate court will look much more closely at what impact it had on the jury. Was it a substantial issue that really mattered? So probably more like that. But is it important? Yep. The length, not at all surprised. It's always long. There are all these little nuances that all matter. So it's just lawyers. Lawyers talk a lot and they write a lot too. So that's why it's so long, Irish Twins mom. That's the explanation. Carolyn wants to know about a polygraph, and I don't believe a polygraph was given. It certainly wasn't admitted and typically is not considered admissible evidence. Don't know for sure if there was one administered. It's just Sherry wants to know about the contempt and whether or not the counsel won't represent her because the attorney, the female attorney sitting next to her, knew what she was looking at. It's not clear exactly. They just said there would be a conflict of interest. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, one of the charges was that this happened during trial. Michelle had a document up on her screen, and it's believed to be that a report on whether or not Jennifer was capable of caring for the kids. It's not public though, so it's under seal. It shouldn't have been on her laptop, and it shouldn't have been blown up big. So there's going to be a contempt hearing. And so Sherry was asking, why won't her counsel represent her? They said, we're not going to represent her. We could have a conflict of interest. I think there may be issues about how she got the document. There may be issues about whether or not she knew she shouldn't blow up the document, whether or not she knew it was under seal. And I think those are the reasons why they felt like there might be a conflict and they better separate it. M. Hanky wants to know, if she were your client, would you have let her give these interviews at all? No, I would not have. But I understand the rationale behind it. I think she really, that maybe that reflects too much bias. I think she believed she was, if either that she was really innocent or that she could fully persuade them that she was really innocent. And I think that's why. And I think the attorney went with her and believed her best shot, and he may be right on this, of getting out of this was to convince law enforcement of that. And you don't do that by refusing to talk. You do that by being upfront with what you have to say. Patty Broomfield is asking me which way I'm leaning, but I'm holding off. I'd like for the jury to come back. I just feel more comfortable with that. Leona Haradi wants to know about Michelle Troconis' career before she met Fotis. I believe that she had some involvement with a ski resort. I don't know exactly what she did for them, but I believe her first husband she met through that. So I think, and that was Nicole's, I don't know if he was her husband, but Nicole's father, her daughter's father, she met through that. She also was, at the time of this, starting up a rug business, importing rugs, I believe, from her home country of. So Deb S10, who do you think she's afraid of, Fotis or Kent? And Fotis is deceased and Kent is weak, and she's obviously afraid to speak because of retaliation. That's what Deb S10 is wondering, if Michelle has any concerns about retaliation. I don't know who it would be, who is left out there who could be responsible for that, Deb. I'm thinking that it's not, that's probably not what she's concerned about, that she's not afraid of retaliation. And let me head over here and say thank you to S. Hughes. I appreciate the super sticker very much. And also, Andrew Allen, has the judge worn a different tie every day? Great channel watching from across the pond. Well, it's nice to have, we have a number of UK watchers, and we really appreciate you. I think the judge has worn a different tie every day. He must have some amazing collection of bow ties. I think you might be right on that. Steph wants to know, do I think the defense did a good job? So I will always say that the defense did a good job, because that is really how I will feel. Now, as far as part of the reason that I always say that is because I know how hard it is. About the only time that I won't say that, and there was a case recently, and I can't say I came out and said it, but it's how I felt. As long as lawyers are really trying, like doing their absolute best. There was one case where I felt like the lawyers just really weren't in there fighting for their client. Was their client popular? No. Was their client almost certainly guilty? Yes. But I just want to see the lawyers giving it their best, because I think that the client deserves that, and the system requires that. If the lawyer won't do that, who's going to stand up for the accused person? So that's about the only time that I would ever say that. In this particular case, I think he did a great job. This was a very hard case. He did this almost entirely by himself. He was very prepared. Did he object a lot? Yep. Did that maybe hack off the jury? Very possibly. Did he preserve his issues for appeal? Yes. So do I think he did a good job? I do. I do think he did a good job. Would I like to have seen everybody in the case doing a lot more exhibits and putting things together for the jury? Yes, I think they needed it. Sally wants to know about the mop and the red and white bucket that disappeared from New Canaan. I do remember that there was talk about a bucket. I don't think, and I remember that the nanny talked about it. I don't remember the colors. And then there was talk about a bucket appearing in Fotis's, in Pavel's red Toyota Tacoma. So I do recall that. The judge mentioned today at the charge conference that the mop, he felt like maybe that was the instrument that was used to kill her, that was what he thought the state was suggesting. Now, there was question over that, and I think we'll hear about the mop specifically, the broken mop handle. I think we'll hear about that. Holly wants to know, how much leverage does a police interrogation hold in trial? A lot. And the reason is, I think, because it's the words of the defendant. And here we didn't have the defendant on the stand. So it's as important as if the defendant got on the stand. If the defendant takes the stand, that is the most important witness in the case, because everybody's waiting to hear. Everybody wants to hear. The defendant doesn't have to testify, but here she more or less did through those interrogations. I think, too, the questions that the police asked were ones people want to know. People want to know the answers to those. And so I think it was very important. Holly, okay, sorry, I answered that. Jean, am I wrong to think that showing the court document on her computer during the trial was suspicious? And Jean felt like that sort of changed her view about Michelle. You could see it one of two ways, Jean. I'll flip it the other way, the lawyer argument, okay? The other way argument is, why'd she do it? She did it because, like they've been saying, this is just the argument. The one argument is she doesn't really care about the rules and she is willing to violate them to get her way. The other way of looking at it is this document was held back, and this document really was as important as she said it was, and it really did show that Fotis was going to gain custody, or for various reasons that Jennifer was going to lose at least partial custody, and therefore that Fotis didn't have any reason to murder Jennifer Dulos. That would be really important. And apparently she felt like the document was so important, she was willing to risk something for it. So you could argue that either way. Rabbit, do you think the daytime smoke from the chimney when only Michelle was at the house is going to be guilty at the minimum after the fact? Is that going to suggest, in other words, that she was destroying evidence that day? It's certainly going to be an issue, Rabbit, because I think that's exactly what they are trying to argue for. That is exactly what they're trying to argue on what the fire meant. And I think we'll hear that 100%. We will hear that in closing arguments tomorrow. Annie, and we'll do just a couple more questions. Annie wants to know, do you think the defense will emphasize in closing that police suggested ideas to Michelle Troconis that influenced her unfairly in a harassing manner? I do think that they're going to talk a lot about the way she handled the questions, and that they're going to pull from the experts that they brought in who talked about testimony and witnesses and those sorts of things. They're going to take those principles that they talked about and they're going to apply them to Michelle during that interrogation. And they're going to say, look, if you were the one, sorry, I've lost my train of thought. So they're going to say, if police suggested that's what I get for reading another comment while I'm trying to answer Annie K's comment. So I think they'll say those experts, what they said, that shows you why she didn't lie, but she said the wrong thing at first. It shows why she would have done this. So they paid big money for those people to come and testify because they believe that Michelle's credibility is all important, that there are many things she said that were helpful to her, and there are a few she said that were unhelpful. This is the defense. And therefore, the experts were to bridge between those two. So the experts were to say, okay, this pile over here that could be a problem, we can explain those away. That's what the experts were there for. Okay, we'll make this the last question. Rockin' Dawkins wants to know how many. So Rockin' Dawkins is asking, I think that's more a question for the chat. Rockin' Dawkins is asking, would you lie for your boyfriend? And would you help your boyfriend drive around? So I think the question will be whether she knew. And she's going to say, I didn't lie. He just sort of influenced me to think that I had seen it. And then when I got to thinking about it, I thought, no, I didn't see him at home that morning. I didn't shower with him. Whoops, I got that wrong. So I think that's what they're suggesting. And she says she didn't know when he was driving around. So I think that will be something we will definitely find out about when the jury comes back. We're just going to see what they decide. All right. And S Cipher, this will be our very, very, did I say that was like, this will be the really, truly last question. S Cipher, for a memory expert, the doctor sure doesn't remember a lot of things. How can she report on Michelle Troconis' memory and remember that selective memory? She doesn't seem very credible. He's referring to she is referring to one of the expert witnesses who forgot in the middle. We did, I think my last video was on that. I'll link it at the end as soon as this video gets processed. So if you miss that one, you can go back and watch it. But it was sort of a funny moment because the witness on memory actually forgot the name of a book she herself had written, and she forgot that while testifying. And she even forgot it twice during the course of that. After it was shown to her, she forgot again. But the truth is that really wasn't what she was testifying about. So technically it didn't undermine her. It just was ironic that someone who was talking about memory ended up forgetting something, but it wasn't directly related to what she was having to say. So it was a little bit different, but it was, as Cypher is right, that was a very entertaining moment. Okay. So, well, tomorrow night at 7 p.m., I want to say thank you again for all the super chats. I am very appreciative of that. For the super stickers, thank you. Thanks to Marlon and to Mama Pinks, and Marlon for the great new emoji. We could have a verdict as early as tomorrow. Could be a week. Nobody asked me about that. So it could be a week. It could be a week from now and they're still deliberating. They do have a lot of evidence. It's most likely somewhere in the middle, not tomorrow and not a week from now, but somewhere in the middle of that. We will get closing arguments tomorrow. So we'll be live tomorrow night and we will talk at 7 o'clock about what happened in the closing arguments. Be sure on your way out, if you would hit the like button, it'll really help the video, and subscribe. We would love to have you back for more. Prosecution showed it to jury, and so you can get a pretty good look at it too. Red blood-like substance on it. He said it was even wet and leaking everywhere. That was a quote. Zip ties, a razor blade. Why were these items there? And in the back window is a bobblehead of Alec Murdaugh going back and forth.